Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40K, a lore podcast. I'm going to keep going. A lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Dukari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craftworlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40K stuff? My name is Ben Crone Barber, and I know pretty much fuck all about 40K. With me is my co-host, Christopher Crallin Allen.
Yeah, hi there.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40K.
Absolutely fuck all.
And my asshole of a brother, Darren.
Reasonable hello.
Who knows so much about 40k, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series, albeit very interrupted, is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Troglodytic! What?
Does anyone get the feeling that Dar may be verging on 100% Dar?
Mate, let me just say the dial is firmly in the red.
Yeah, we are through the looking
It's
glass.
at 11.
We are.
Yeah.
He's. This is his final form, I think. We're in trouble.
The gauge glass is broken.
Yeah, I'll be dead tomorrow.
Mate, all right. Well, we know Darren's doing all right. You all right, Ben? Hey, mate.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. I was.
He said without hesitation.
Bit concerned about that intro. My OCD's urging me to cancel the whole thing and do it again.
We'll fix it in the edit. It'll be fine. Seamless.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Ben, if we were going to overdub Darren's bit, whose voice would we use?
You bastard.
Whose voice would we use?
Mark Strong.
Brian Blessed.
Who's the old, very small Scottish kids' TV presenter who was married to the really tall guy?
Oh.
Dressed like a little schoolboy.
Yeah, one of the Crankies.
The Crankies.
The Crankies.
The Crankies.
Yeah, the lady from the Crankies. Why not?
It's a bold move making height jokes, mate.
I'm not joking about heights, buddy.
It's one thing to make a joke and somebody else spit out coffee as a result, but it's another thing entirely to spit out coffee as a result of your own joke. It's like
Darren's going to be obnoxious this episode.
Delayed self-humor.
He's going to be a piece of work. Brace yourself.
I remember having a very similar conversation with the two of you about who would play us in the film adaptation of this podcast, and Darren said that it would be Tilda Swinton.
Dead ringer, mate. Dead ringer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the lankiness, it's the lankiness.
I mean, she'd need to tone down the masculinity a bit, but she'd be able to pull it off.
Right, before we move on, the usual requests for support, which we do so comfortably. Big thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. You guys are the soapy tits. If you're not part of this merry band, and by some weird twist of fate you actually make it to the end of this episode, you can click on the Patreon link in the description, and you can sign up today for as little as £3.
But only if you make it to the end of the episode.
Only if you make it to the end of the episode. If you sign up before, we'll set Darren on you. And he will be at 100% when he comes after. It's terrifying. So this will give you access to our Discord, so you can join our little international group of 40k lovers. But there's also fantasy lovers on there. Yeah, there's also old world guys on there. You don't have to talk to them when you come on. If you only like 40k, it's totally fine. You don't have to speak to
We've whole sections devoted, well, we've 3 channels devoted desperately to
but there are 3
40K.
whole channels.
3 whole channels. And you can just blank those other fuckers, let me tell you. I mean, I remember maybe about 2 of them, and every now and then I get a notification going, hey, I can't seem to access my thing. Go fuck yourself.
To all of our old world listeners, he loves you. He's at 100% Dar. It's like Russian roulette when he's at this stage. Who knows what's coming? Like,
you wanted a relationship with me? This is what it's like.
If you don't fancy a subscription but you want to support the show, there's a ton of other ways you could do that. Just click on the support us link in the description, where you'll find all of our affiliate links and other support platforms. You can even buy us a coffee. Did you know that was a thing? Dar, I think you knew that was a thing.
I do, yeah.
They could buy us a
coffee. Did you set that up? Yeah.
You can
buy,
yeah. People can buy us a
Here
coffee.
I am paying for my own coffee like a chump. Bloody hell.
Anyway, thanks for getting through that with us. Right, Kral, you know what time it is.
Yes, mate.
Citizen of the Imperium, it's time for frontal lobotomy or bottle in front of me.
Yay! I'm not at all disturbed by that.
Who's the little lady's name that does that for us?
That's Fiona.
Warwick Davis. We talked
Fiona.
about it.
Does Fiona know what she's saying?
Yeah, I think Michael probably explained what.
One, she's Deutsch. Two, she sounds fairly young. And I don't know if lobotomy or... does she even know the word bottle?
Well,
She's German, mate. Of course she does.
I think she's 6.
Oh, sorry,
I may
Das
be
Bottle.
wrong.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure. I'll have to double check.
Der Bottle? Die Bottle?
Anyway, Kral, are you ready?
Yeah. Mate,
I know that
that was the whole point, isn't it?
I know I know that you are I know you've probably listened to the last episode like a cheating bastard, but that's fine. It's okay. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
How big
yeah.
is a Chaos Space Marine warband? How many Chaos Space Marines are in a Chaos Space Marine warband?
An average war.
An average.
Oh, shit. They can be as big as a regiment, can't they?
How big is a regiment?
Darren?
No.
Okay.
But what is a warband?
They're about yay big.
How many can fit in that space?
For listeners, he's
About
holding
this
his
big.
hands up for the average penis length.
That's it, yeah.
Oh, shit, that's
7
the
mil,
average?
right, Ben? Massive.
Massive. Yeah.
This is a wide-angle camera, Ben. It's fine.
It's a fisheye.
I grade that distance as about 3 Swintons.
I have no flipping idea. No number springs to mind. I have no inspiration. Okay, let me just shoot at the shot in the dark. 100.
It was 50 to 100, Chris.
Oh, shit.
I'm going to give you that one.
Well, it was right,
Well done.
so I think I should get it, yeah.
You got exactly the right answer, so we'll bend the rules. We'll let you.
Thank you, Ben.
I mean,
for being so
next time
generous.
you need to be even more exact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Next time you need to say what the answer I've got written here and not something that's a part
Yeah.
of it.
You said 50 to 100. The answer I have here is 50-100.
Okay, Ben,
Right,
you ball
okay.
breaker. Go on.
Name the Chaos Space Marine chapter who were cursed to hear the voices of the dead.
Wasn't the Rainbow chapter, that's for
No.
sure. They were awesome.
They were funky as fuck.
The Voices of the Dead. It wasn't the Word Bearers, was it?
No, it was.
Okay, it wasn't one of the legions. It
Or the
wasn't one of the big names. No.
thousand Sons?
No, it wasn't one of the original
No.
Legion names. It was it was a new name. Let's call it.
It wasn't. Okay, it was one of the new. Oh God, who knows? I barely remember the old ones. Okay, Shot in the Dark, the Kumquat Legion.
No, it was the Crimson
Go on.
Slaughter, or the Crimson Sabers, as I think they were used to be called. Anyway, okay, no worries.
Whoa! How's it written down in your notes, Ben? That's the important thing.
It's written down 1,000 Suns. Oh shit, you got it right.
Did I?
No, it was the Crimson Slaughter.
Oh.
No.
Pulling my leg, you bastard.
Right. What planet did Angron's Legion become Space Marines?
No planet I'd want to visit. I have no idea.
Ben,
It's Deshea.
he's correct.
Deshea.
Yeah,
Deshea.
he's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, moving on swiftly.
Yeah.
Kral, what is the ultimate goals, plural, of many Chaos worshippers? What's their ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal is for chaos to rule the universe.
For them as individuals, though, within that process.
For them as
What are
individuals.
they trying to achieve?
I don't know, to submit themselves fully to whatever chaos flavor they're
but
into.
then what happens? How do they...
Ascend. I
Okay,
don't know,
yeah,
to
go with that.
Demonhood.
Yay!
Boom! Yes.
Oh man, powers of deduction.
Fucking get in, Kral. 50%. Brilliant.
Wait, what? The first one being a guess,
First one was a guess, but it was...
and then I managed to work out the other
Yep.
ones. Way, or the other
There we
one.
go.
Cool, brilliant.
Nice.
All right, I look forward to the bottle lobotomy.
See, it certainly seems like that's what's coming. Okay. So we've suitably mangled
Wicked.
that. Would we,
Yeah.
Well, I thought that went very well. I have no notes whatsoever.
Darren, this is all just a setup to make you look excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
This is
You're
this is
welcome.
what all these entries
You
for.
are welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we? Did you mention
Where we're going?
Where we're going in this episode? Last episode,
We did not.
No?
This episode, which will probably be self-evident given all the marketing and the file name and the images we'll post, is all to do with the Aeldari. Hooray!
Yeah.
Space elves.
Ooh.
Love it.
Space elves, my dudes.
Our first non-Imperium. Well, Chaos was non-Imperium, but I kind of feel a bit familiar with Chaos already for obvious reasons. So, Aeldari.
Aeldari.
Known.
So in the next 2 episodes, we're going to cover 4 flavors of Aeldari. This episode, we're going to cover Craftworld and Exodite. And then next episode, we'll cover Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, and Harlequins. I had to draw a line somewhere, and that's where I've chosen it. So if you don't like it, there's nothing I can really do about it. Is everything okay at home?
Podcasts are available.
What?
I know this is probably getting ahead of it, but those 4 groups that you've just described, they sound the first 3 sound massive. The Harlequins strike me as quite a small. Are they quite small in terms of total size compared to the others?
They are, yes, is the short answer, but they're very powerful. If you could imagine them as a cross between clowns, the SAS, and Timmy Mallet. That's really what we're going for. And
Amazing.
for non-UK based listeners, just Google Timmy Mallet and sit back. It's quite a ride.
There's going to be a lot of Googling in this episode. I hope you're taking notes.
Google. The Aeldari, a fallen race, is really what they are pitched as in the current 40K timeline. They have existed for millions, if not billions. It was millions of years, and just I have to make sure. They either were created or evolved or became allies of the Old Ones when the Old Ones existed at the dawn of recorded time. They were involved in the War in Heaven, which is the Great War between the kind of Old One collective and a mystery evil race. It was the Necrons. It was totally the Necrons. And
The Necrons who are not from Necromunda.
Maybe the
Okay.
So they had the Aeldari ended up with a galactic empire spanning the galaxy. That was the galactic empire was the clue. So the Aeldari have existed in some state for about 60 million years, and they have ruled the galaxy for a significant portion of that time.
You said they ruled the universe. In what sense? They were just the apex species. They actually ruled, as in they were dominating. They're out conquesting. What kind of
yes?
rule are we talking?
Basically, they owned space. They could do anything they wanted within the corporeal world. They used the webway, which was a construction of the Old Ones, to be able to travel instantaneously from planet to planet or from craft to craft, depending on where the web gates were. They were able to control not only the orbits of planets, but the orbits of stars and the positions of stars within a galaxy. So they very much treated the galaxy as living inside a giant bonsai tree that they tended, and they could move around and adjust.
So they could literally move planets into habitable zones in order to then populate. That's cool.
Yeah.
So were they unchallenged in terms of
largely unchallenged, and this then feeds into their collapse. So there's not really all that much written about the kind of day-to-day existence of the Eldar, as I will continue to call them. Well, no, I won't. I'll call them Aeldari. The Aeldari from year 0 to 59,990,000. What we're really looking at now is their kind of fall to decadence and their eventual collapse as a galactic race. So these are the kind of archetypal elf narrative that you find in a lot of fantasy and sci-fi writing where they were a great race, there was some great cataclysm, and now they're a shadow of their reflection of their former selves. And it's really all to do with a character, and I'll be interested to see if any of you can remember this character, Slaanesh. Anyone remember Slaanesh?
Yeah.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them.
I think I saw that band.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
They're kind of big band nights, Slaanesh and the Slippery Aardvarks. It was such a great night. Really, it's good. I don't remember much of it. I woke up very sore.
Yeah, I do remember when they released the Slippery Aardvarks into the crowd. That was fun. Yeah, really, that got us moving.
As the Eldar were unchallenged, they became decadent and foppish, but also cruel. We've talked previously about the kind of the psychic capacity of a race, and we were talking about the humans in that instance and how they were moving towards being a race of psykers, and how the Emperor's Great Imperium was to slow that process down and focus it so it could be managed, it wouldn't run rampant. The reason that he wanted to do it that way was because of the collapse of the Aeldari. They effectively indulged every single whim they ever had, and it was writ large across the galaxy. And the reflection of that kind of decadent excess began to coalesce within the warp.
So did the Emperor know that Slaanesh was... Does anybody know that Slaanesh was born as a result of the Eldar? Is it known?
Yes, there's a good handful of people who, within the Imperium and other races, know about the fall of the Eldar, but it's literally a handful. They do have, there are texts that describe it, and there are, I suppose you could say there's actually a fair few more than a handful if you factor in chaos worshippers and kind of academics who fall into the kind of the grasp of Tzeentch or Slaanesh. They're aware of the importance of the Aeldari in the birth of Slaanesh. So as this process of indulgence continued, you know, up to and including sodomy with stars, I've completely made that up. They are...
Word. It sounds like you would chafe.
Do you need a kind of harness for that? Is that a...
Yeah. A sling.
You better wear some sunglasses.
On your ass.
Factor 50.
And some factor 1 million.
Yeah. Wetsuit and a welder's helmet.
Wear a hat.
Leave a tap running. This all built to a horrific crescendo where the kind of spiritual angst coalesced within the warp and gained sentience, which is a word that's taken me 3 years to be able to pronounce properly, which brought about the birth of Slaanesh as an entity, as a kind of an awareness, as a consciousness. Mr. Chris?
Creation of Slaanesh happened then. What did the other three big ones already exist?
Yes.
Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Khorne, were they already a boot?
Yes, they were.
Doing their thing?
They were.
Yep. Okay. How did they feel when a new big player came on the scene? Was it something did it take them by surprise? Did they have to adapt, or are they kind of always aware of these energies and emotions, and when they just kind of manifest and coalesce into a, for lack of a better term, a physical thing, you know, in the form of Slaanesh? Yeah. How did the other three respond to that? How does that fit into the the chaos pie?
The understated response would be they didn't respond very well to it, because those three had divided up the warp between them, and suddenly they had all lost a section of their own power, which had then been factored into this coalescing being. And so where there were three of them vying for kind of supremacy, there was now four. So they lost a third of their power each in terms of
good math.
Good math. Thanks very much.
But is that actually?
I'm on 9 coffees so far this morning.
You can tell.
Yeah, it's only the 9th coffee that gets you to that 110% dar, you know. But is that how that would have happened? I mean, was some of the energy that Slaanesh is made from before Slaanesh was around, was that going to the other 3 gods?
Yeah, it was largely divided up. If you imagine it as kind of a large, I suppose, pie, to use Chris's analogy. Are you hungry, mate? You all right?
Starving.
You know,
Hungry for 40k lore.
Yes, Crow.
Nom 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 nom.
This pie is very bookish.
This pie is very microphony.
If you can imagine the center, the middle of the pie, looking down upon it, taking a planar view, that's where you have no doubt that area belongs to Nurgle or to Tzeentch or to Khorne or whatever. But as you get out towards the edges, it's a bit more kind of...
The crust.
It's a bit kind of risque in terms of, well, I mean, he beat that guy to death, but he had a massive hard-on when he was doing it. Is that really Khorne?
Yeah.
A guy died, so it's definitely Khorne, but the guy took a lot of pleasure in it. So is it? Does that? It's those
a
kind of
pie diagram.
In a Venn pie erection murder diagram.
Yes.
The center bit that looks strange. No, I'm not going to finish that sentence.
I know where you were going with that. Don't go there.
But, you know, in the absence of Slaanesh, then would Khorne have been like, oh, that energy over there, it's a bit sexy, it's a bit risque. I'll just take that. I don't care if I'll just have that. Like,
yeah. He was going, no, just strap an axe to it. You'll be fine. It's one of mine. Yeah.
Just put a pneumatic drill in it. It's fine.
Yeah.
we can do some damage with that. Like.
It's got an STD. Oh, Nurgle, that's yours. No. Yeah.
But Ben, on that point, you know, you were talking about the energy and that the Chaos Gods draw from their worshippers or just beings in general. It's not like they get to choose it, right? It's like murder and blood is just inherently, like osmosis, drawn to Khorne. It's not like he gets a say in it. So if there are kind of hedonism and excess, the Chaos Gods don't make do and just take that as worship, do they? That just kind of continues to go through the ether or the sea of souls.
Well, they did until Slaanesh manifested.
Yeah.
They would have to, in that grossly ridiculous example, Khorne would have taken that guy. That guy's vital essence, shall we say? Yeah,
his juju.
And then, but if it was a scientist inventing a disease while having a rager, that would have been Nurgles.
Right. Okay.
I can see the cogs turning in Ben's head. He's like, let me think of a scenario which is really like, okay, what about if a guy was creating a really deadly pox, right, whilst having sex with 3 other people, okay, and he was changing. It's like, how did...
Crow, don't stop, mate. You are... Hold on, let me get a tissue. No. You're smashing this. That is great. But, like, you know, so when Slaanesh came along, was Nurgle like, oh, I would have normally taken that guy, but I kind of didn't know what to do with him because he had a hard-on while making a plague. So, fuck it, you have him. I don't know.
Let me tell you,
you're jam. Like
you're just now referencing the statements of many an NHS manager across the country.
If anything, Darren, it sounds like Slaanesh was doing the guys a favor. The other Chaos Gods a favor. Like, they didn't know what to do with this weird, sexy, hedonistic energies. So Slaanesh just kind of, you know,
he was like, "Look, I'll deal with those." Like. Those things that you don't want to deal with, I'll deal with.
You're welcome.
Let me tell you, I am delighted with the way this episode is going. It's made me really happy. So, over the thousands of years that the psychic manifestation of the turmoil of the hedonistic Aeldari was happening, and I say thousands, I mean, you know, tens of thousands of years, it corrupted real space around kind of these focused pockets of Aeldari. And so you had the warp and real space merging to create, as we discussed in the previous episodes, areas of like demon worlds and warp storms, and. This wasn't the totality of the galaxy, but it was definitely very well seasoned with orgy-induced demonic activity. And those warp storms, if we'll go back to our Imperium sessions, is what corrupted and disrupted the galactic spanning pre-Imperium human empire. And it's what cut Terra off from the rest of the kind of galaxy as a whole. If you'll recall, the Emperor came to power on Terra, and then suddenly all the warp storms went away. It's when those warp storms... No, I'm about to explain it to you, Chris.
Oh,
So all the warp storms disappeared because all that kind of roiling sex energy manifested itself within Slaanesh, or as Slaanesh, and so all of that energy was pulled across the galaxy into the sentient being of a new god, and the birthplace of that god was the original home systems of the Aeldari race. That area of space was drawn completely into the warp, and you can still get in and out of it in there in the warp storm itself. But that is
just like the Aeldari do.
Yeah, and that is the Eye of Terror. That is the area of the galaxy where as we discussed last episode, the Chaos Space Marine legions fled to, because that's where they're able to commune with their gods and their demons directly. So basically, yes, the Aeldari fucked Slaanesh into existence and created a space anus where all of the evil can go and do that. Yeah.
Wow.
I ran out of analogies. I'm sorry. I ran out of analogies.
You did fine. That was the Eye of Terror is Slaanesh's or Slaanesh's. Slaanesh?
Slaanesh.
That dude, that person's birthplace. Is that what you're saying? That's where all the energies coalesce. That's where it happened.
Yes.
That was ground zero. Okay.
Exactly right. That was ground zero. It's not Slaanesh's domain. It's just it's the area where Slaanesh gained sentience and punched a hole through reality.
So are the planets of the original Aeldari homeworlds, you say they got drawn into the warp, do they still exist in corporeal
They're
space?
all still there. They're all demon worlds.
They're all demon
worlds. You can visit them, and frequently people do. Lunatics and madmen, in my opinion.
The odd tourist.
The odd tourist. But they're still there. They're referred to as the crone worlds. They're the kind of fallen homeworlds of the original Aeldari race. So you have all of those planets. There's whole cities there just devoid of life. Because when Slaanesh manifested, everything that was living in terms of Aeldari was effectively sucked into the warp. Or went mad and went on a killing frenzy and died, as Slaanesh absorbed the souls of 99.99% of an entire race. So the Aeldari that still exist are, a fraction of 1% of the original Eldar race.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Hundreds, at least hundreds.
Hundreds, okay.
Numbers of whom?
The Eldar, like how many
souls?
Exactly. How many souls made Slaanesh, and how many are still alive?
There's no real hard and fast number, but we're talking less than 1 billion galactically for Eldar, so not a huge amount.
Are still alive.
Are still alive,
right?
Okay. Which means there were billions,
if not trillions. Yeah.
Yes, billions, if not trillions, of long-lived, decadent people and died. So, Mr. Chris.
The creation of Slaanesh by the elves. Did they regret that? What were their reaction to it? Obviously, it changed things forever.
Yes, it did change things forever. The Aeldari, thank you, Chris, not elves, were able to... they're a mournful... Well, aspects of them are mournful beings. Certain others are not and continue in the way that they existed. And that really comes down to the way the 4 different Aeldari factions moved forward. And it would be interesting to touch on that just now. The Drukhari, or the Aeldari that became the Drukhari, that became the Dark Eldar, they realized that Slaanesh is constantly hungry for their souls, and for the souls of all Eldar. So whenever an Eldar dies, if they're not able to get into a waystone or various other methods of trickery, then their soul is consumed by Slaanesh. Mr. Chris?
You said waystones. Is that not a fantasy old world thing?
It is.
They have waystones in 40k.
It is also a 40k thing.
Are they in the same form? Are they like little obelisks or big obelisks?
Bejazzled.
No,
bejazzled obelisks.
The waystones for the Aeldari, and usually the Azurani, who are the Craftworld Eldar, it appears as like a gem pendant that's put on their armor or worn around their neck, and if they die, their soul goes into that gemstone, and then that gemstone is placed upon a thing that we'll discuss later in this episode. So in terms of how they get around being... I wanted to use the term sucked off, but you know what I meant. Drawn into...
Do it, bro. Go on.
Yeah, treat yourself, Darren. Treat yourself. Oh my God, so many. I've even gone too full Dar for me. I'm trying to calm it down. It's bad. God damn. So the 4 factions, the Drukhari exist in the webway because they are safe from the day-to-day predations of Slaanesh. However, they have to restore their souls because they're in the warp. They've got a low... How would you say it? There's a kind of low pulse drain on their souls, as their soul stuff is kind of unraveled and pulled into the warp via the webway. They replenish that through torture, through the pain of others. And so they come up with excruciating tortures for the slaves that they capture, and the energy of the pain and the anguish, it kind of tops up their battery. So a haggard Drukhari, a haggard old-looking Drukhari, if they torture enough, will be able to, in fact, look young and vital again, and be young and vital again. It's like an elixir for them.
Wow.
Both the Exodites and the Azurani, the Craftworld Eldar, they use waystones, and as we mentioned, the waystones, small little gem that is put on their armor or worn as a pendant, and if they die, it goes into that pendant, their soul goes into that pendant, and then they place their soul stone on either the Wraithbone core of a Craftworld, which we'll discuss this episode, or the Wraithbone world tree spirit of a Exodite world. They're in fact the same thing, and so you end up with this large kind of sexy tomb of svelte Eldar souls. Mr. Chris?
That last step of the process, after they die, their soul goes.
They don't
into
do it themselves,
stone.
Chris.
Okay,
Somebody does it for them.
It sounds like someone needs to carry that for them. Yeah, that needs to be done by a mate. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So do they have like apothecary guys who go around like the battlefield and pick up the stones when they're done?
Oh, any Eldar can pick it up and stick it on and return it to the associated Craftworld or Exodite planet and put it on the core. Mr. Chris?
Can the enemies of the Aeldari pick them up and either use it themselves,
yes,
or use it as kind of like negotiating ammo or anything like that?
Only if they're aware of what it in fact is. There's a lot of waystones that are just kind of held on mantelpieces in the Imperium found on an old battlefield. They're
none the wiser. They don't know what's in it.
No, they have no idea what's in it. It's just this nice-looking Xenos artifact. But they will eventually be hunted down and returned.
And if that happens, with the soul of the Aeldari, would they be sentient, like just sat on the mantelpiece?
There is a level of sentience, yeah.
Let me the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
What happened? What would happen if the stone was destroyed? Like if it was smashed or something?
The soul would immediately transfer to the warp and be swallowed by Slaanesh. There is quite a good story within one of the codices where a howling banshee, a type of Aeldari warrior, is killed, and the demon of Slaanesh plucks the waystone from their armor, cracks it between his claws, and drops it into his mouth and absorbs the soul of the
like a raw egg.
Yeah. Puts in, and the way it's described is that the demon shivers kind of in the same way I shiver when I have a shot of tequila. Do you know that kind of that kind of idea? The shimmy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then does the walk into the dance floor dance before
Yeah.
the groove on. Pick up ladies.
I've just got a vision of this kind of Slaaneshi bar where there's a demon walking around with a bandolier of waystones and saying, give us some money, you can have one of these.
Hot
and
pants.
Yeah.
And like, shot, flaming shot, flaming Eldari song.
So during this process of corruption, we'll call it moral corruption, or existence without consequences, really, is what we're talking about here for the Aeldari. They were able to do whatever they wanted, so they did. It became clear to kind of space travelers, or those Eldar who really only visited the home world every 100 or so years, as we would reckon it, that something was up, and that every time they revisited, the worlds were getting worse and worse, more cruel, more decadent, a lot of towers in the shapes of certain body parts, not pinkies, carry on. And they kind of saw the writing on the wall. They could sense this kind of bad vibe, in quotes, not only on the planets, but in the space around the planets that they called their homeworlds. And so some of them decided, we should probably do survival prepping here, because this is headed in a bad direction, and we may want to just have a life outside of this type of civilization. They weren't aware of what was going to happen. They just didn't want to exist in the same way as the bulk of the Aeldari race. Mr. Chris?
You might have just answered it then. Who are you talking about then? Are these like the everyday Eldari that kind of saw the writings on the wall, or this is different species?
No,
it's of space.
Yeah, it's the Aeldari. I'm only referring to Aeldari in this kind of aspect.
Okay.
So it's the ones that were like on the merchant fleets, or in the kind of some sort of space navy capacity, a space force, one might say.
They weren't going to the sex parties.
No, they weren't working
yeah.
for a living.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting for a moment that sex parties are not work.
Good recovery.
Well, I also like there is the knowing smile on Ben's face. Not that he's ever been invited. He does like craft services.
Listen, I know some people that work at those things, and they're good people. Sex workers are people too.
Oh, whoa! You took that way too far.
Is there such a thing on this podcast? I'm not sure.
No, not really. I just love the idea that my way of recognizing people as people is to mock them. I find it charming because everyone does that to me. So these groups of Aeldari were broadly split into three kind of sections. Those who would become the Craftworlds set about building massive ships, which they called Craftworlds. So these are spacecraft the size of cities, the size of huge cities, like the size of London floating through space.
Cool.
And it's kind of all these kind of swooping architectural shapes, and it's very kind of svelte looking, which as I understand is a type of wet felt, as it kind of glides through.
I thought it was smelly felt.
Ooh. They but these craft worlds were fully kind of hermetically sealed civilizations. They had their own cultures within them, all based on the original Aeldari culture, but modified to stop the collapse or stop the kind of spread of decadence. Another group were referred to as the Exodites, and these were, how would you describe them? They'd be like space wood elves, really, insofar as they would go to a kind of an untouched maiden planet, an untouched virginal planet, and they would terraform it for their own needs. And
are these the guys that
ride on dinosaurs? These are the guys that end up riding on dinosaurs, yeah. And let me just clarify, that's not a sex thing. They actually do use dinosaurs as mounts.
That's amazing.
And so
and have sex with them.
Look, Chris, what they do outside of battle time is their own business, all right?
No, it's everyone's business, because you let them do their own thing, they'll fuck a fucking demon god into existence. All right?
So the Exodites very much were Craftworlds writ large in terms of these maiden worlds, as they became to be called. So planets structured around very kind of agrarian, basic Aeldari culture. Arboreal is a good word to throw in here. I'm not entirely sure there were any ass spiders, but I'm sure they come along in due course.
There's time. And
so a defining characteristic of both Craftworlds and Maiden Worlds, which are the Exodite planets, are these Wraithbone constructs, these Wraithbone cores. That's Wraith and Bone put together. That's the name.
Bone Wraiths. Got it.
Bone Wraiths, yep. So these are... Wraithbone is a psychoactive compound that any Eldar, if they meditate, can bring into existence. They can sit there and suddenly they can make small, kind of a couple of centimeters in diameter items. There's a lot of...
Where does it come from? Or does it just appear out of nothing? Or do they have to like sneeze? Achoo! And it just like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
A pill.
I've got a wraith cold.
They give it to each other at weddings. They're like, you can have this... Wraith snot made for you. So yeah, what does it? What do they materialize it? What does it? Yeah, does it?
How does it come into being?
They effectively manifest it from the warp. That's an oversimplification of the process, but it's with all psychic energy. All psychic energy is pulled from the warp, and when you manifest Wraithbone, it's done. Through that same process.
It's like warp limescale. It's just kind of a byproduct of the use of psychic energy.
So that's a strangely astute. Who are you?
I wish I could manifest my Wraithbone supply into existence. I have to go and meet a guy. Raining and everything. It's like, ugh.
There is
Do I really want it?
Amusingly, there is a novel where one of these kind of chaos cults come across a kind of stash of Wraithbone or a block of Wraithbone, and they grind it into powder and snort it.
Wow.
Good times were had, or was it the worst evening ever?
Oh my god, you end up with such a head. You get the post-Wraithbone drip. It's awful.
Yeah. Ugh. I don't got any chewing gum. Ugh.
I mean, is it... still active, Wraithbone?
It is a psychoactive compound. Not dissimilar to Spook that we mentioned in the Necromunda episode, but it doesn't have the capacity to turn you into a psyker. Under certain circumstances, it might, but
all the high, none
rare.
Of the come down. That sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds great. In Craftworlds, and indeed in Exodite worlds, you have these chaps and chapesses referred to as bone singers. And what they're able to do is they're able to manifest larger and larger constructs of Wraithbone into reality. And it's these guys that make the Aeldari dreadnoughts and the Wraith Lords, I beg your pardon, and Wraith Guard, which are an interesting venture into necromancy for the Aeldari.
That's interesting. So they're like construction workers almost.
Yes, in a way, yeah, because they're the ones that build and repair the actual infrastructure of Craftworlds and Exodite worlds.
And as a substance, is it hard? Can you make armor out of it? Is it that resilient?
It is an armored substance. Most of the Aeldari armor is made out of it, especially for aspect warriors. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there.
So it is a drug and a material that you can fabricate things with.
Yeah. If you're
right,
it has been used as a drug in a very specific single instance. It's not a drug as per se.
You can't be like, I don't know, lost on a planet wearing full armor and just on a kind of cold night just lick your breastplate and get off your tits, like, oh, that'll pass the time.
Hey,
frogs.
Hey Ben, I was about to say, Ben, is that frog skin armor really a good move here?
You want to try it, bro? Go on.
You want to try, bro?
I haven't licked
Not
this
really.
And so seeing the kind of the fate of their race writ large on the galactic stage, all of these craft worlds set sail, in quotes, and the maiden worlds sort of finished their construction and then closed most, if not all, of their warp portals, their warp gates. And so when the collapse came and this kind of supernova of awfulness emerged from the center of the Aeldari homeworlds, they were relatively protected. They still went through a great deal of spiritual, emotional, maybe sexual, who knows, turmoil. And once the kind of storm abated, it was revealed that not all of the craft worlds were able to get away. A lot of them were caught within the rapidly expanding kind of supernova of Slaanesh. And a lot of maiden worlds were kind of terraformed a little bit too close to the home worlds. So you see a lot of maiden worlds scattered around the galactic rim and also the kind of more easterly parts of the galaxy as you're looking at a map of the Imperium. The craft worlds seem to be sailing continuously away from
that point,
from the Eye of Terror. And I mean, you wouldn't you? The clue's in the name.
But they would have had no way of knowing how big that kind of
none at all
effect would have been.
None at all.
They didn't even know what was going to happen. They just knew something bad was going to happen.
They knew something bad. Exactly right. They got a bad feeling, or they got a feeling that there was some bad mojo coming.
Yeah.
Aeldari intuition.
Aeldari intuition, and indeed it did. There was bad mojo. Bad mojo was had.
I bet there was a lot of "I told you so."
Do you know what? You're the king of segues here, Chris, because that's exactly what I'm about to talk about. How did they change their culture to stop themselves, A, from falling into the grasp of Slaanesh, and B, to be able to live a life where you weren't in danger of having your soul sucked through your spine? And I think we should maybe start with when this all happened. So craft worlds as they exist today within the 40K setting have existed for 10,000 years, which is an interesting number because that's also how long it's been since the Horus Heresy. And indeed, the Great Crusade, and thus the Horus Heresy, was only possible with the fall of the Eldar and the kind of creation of the Eye of Terror there, because that gave the Chaos Forces instant access to the real world, but it also effectively wiped out the kind of ruling galactic race and allowed humanity a somewhat easier time during the Great Crusade when the Emperor was trying to bring back the Imperium of Man, or the Galactic Empire of Man, which would become the Imperium. Mr. Ben.
2 questions. Did the Great Crusade encounter the Eldar during the expansion? They did.
It did, yes, yeah.
And you say that the Craftworlds have been around for about 10,000 years. Were they around? Surely they would have had to start building the Craftworlds before the Eye of Terror creation.
I mean, there would have been 100 to 1,000 years before the actual fall. The Aeldari, who would become the Craftworld Aeldari, kind of started that process.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, But when you're able to psychically manifest only like 2 square centimeters at a time, building a city takes a while.
Yeah. Are the whole cities made of wraithbone then?
Every kind of hard surface is wraithbone within an Aeldari. So there are some exceptions. They have some very nice teak countertops. And there'll be
China teapots.
It's wraithbone accented with other materials.
Can the material be? Is it just like stone once it's made? You can carve it into the shapes you need, or like if you were making like a pavement, let's say in one of the Craftworlds, does it need to be brought? Does the wraithbone need to be kind of brought into the corporeal? It needs to be manifested in place in the shape that you want it to be.
More the latter than the former. So it's described in the lore as being sung into shape by these bone singers, which I often thought would be an amazing porn name. But how we've gotten back onto Slaanesh again, I don't know. But it's a good point, well made. Yes, these Aeldari bone singers do in fact sing their buildings into existence and other things with wraithbone. It's an incredibly tough material, incredibly resilient material, but it's nonetheless has a bone-like brittleness to it. If it even gets cracked a little bit, it shatters really at that stage. So we have these post-apocalypse Aeldari on a floating city. How are they going to structure their civilizations? Well, they eventually, within a few decades, create a system of paths. It's how they manage their kind of psychic need and their emotional density. The Aeldari, all of them, feel things somewhere between 10 to 20 times stronger than we as humans would. So when they're happy, they're real happy. And it goes down into their kind of very core. When they're angry, just get out the way. It's that they don't feel basic forms of emotions. They're all extreme, or they have the capacity to only feel extreme emotions.
When they're content, they're really content.
Oh, God. Getting them off a sofa, you need a wraithbone pry bar.
Oh, mate.
And about 3 months to make it.
Yeah. So they developed a system called the Paths, Paths, or pathways. And what they really are is a way of living, a way of focusing on a specific aspect of culture up to the point where you are a master of that, and at which stage you can continue within that path where you become locked in, or you can start a new path. So you have every kind of artisan, the path of the carpenter, the path of the bone singer, the path of, the welder. Do they weld? It probably is, probably wraithbone welders. But also of arts and poetry and all kind of aspects of culture.
I'm just imagining like talent trees in an RPG game. Like,
yes.
Which one should I go for? Which one should I go for? And you kind of got to go all or nothing, really. Don't spread your skills.
Exactly.
I always spread, and I always fucking regret it. I always regret it. I'm
just
always
focus.
Like, I should have gone that way.
I tend to go like everything into charisma, somewhat ironically, and
compensating much.
I get amazing choices, but I get killed by like even a small giant rat.
Yeah. Somebody
small giant rat
near you.
Or I use wisdom as my dump stat, and I ended up just being this pretty idiot wandering around.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cooking with Waystones. I'm your host and all-round sexy, good-time guy, Slaanesh. That's right, it's me. Hello. This week, we'll be looking at a classic, Scrambled Aeldari. First off, you'll need to collect some waystones, but not any old waystones. They need to be collected from the bodies of freshly deceased Aeldari who died in an excruciating but sexy manner. Perhaps shot in the head by a sniper with a hard-on, or even just a simple, frisky throttling. Excellent. Good. Now, keep them on your mantelpiece for at least 2 decades, and if anyone asks about them, just say you think they look pretty. Once matured, take each individual waystone, pop it between your teeth, and give it a little crunch. This will release the Aeldari goodness trapped inside, just bursting with flavor. Yummy. Now, just pop a handful into your soul blender, add some rosemary and thyme, the recently admitted sins of a human sex slave, a smattering of freshly picked newborn wangs from Wang World 7, and for that special mushroom undertone, some orc jizz. Now just give that all a little sugar. Wonderful. Splendid. Once fully sugared, slurp it into your pan which you've had preheating at a sexy 360 million degrees. While cooking, remember to continually fold the soul mix. This will help to scramble the souls and keep them moist. Yeah. Now these can be served on their own as a lovely winter warmer. Brrr. Or if you want to spice things up a touch, you can take inspiration from my most devout minion, the greater demon Guy Fieri. Fry the whole thing in Jägermeister and garnish with raisins. Fantastic. Nice. And there you have it. Another absolute peach from my cookbook. Waystones. They're just really, really great.
So yes, they become these kind of recognized masters of their craft. But it isn't just kind of cultural aspects of this. There are also paths for psychics. They have the way of the seer, the way of the far seer, way of the warlock. And then you have the way of the warrior. Now, this is where we get into a bit of the kind of cosmology of the Eldar. Because every Asuryani, who is the Craftworld Eldar, is able or has a suit of armor and is able to pick up a gun, which is a shuriken catapult. And that is, if you think of a magnetic railgun that fires wraithbone shuriken, that's what their gun is.
Okay. Because I was thinking something with a bit of shitty elastic. I was like, that sounds dangerous. You don't want to holster that loaded.
You can't do wraithbone elastic because once you let it go, it just stays exactly where it is. It's dunk. Who designed this gun?
Also, it took you 3 months to make it, by which point your target's
you're already dead. You're already dead. Yeah. So there is a level of citizen soldiery going on with the Aeldari. Brackets. Does that sound familiar, fellas? Close brackets. But they do have a dedicated aspect or dedicated path of the warrior focused purely on the, and I'm going to use this word in quotes, aspects of warfare that are endemic within all warfare, like stealth, close combat, shock and awe, the kind of basic veteran kind of skills you need, jump pack troops for flying troops, and heavy weapon troops. Each one of those has their own path within the kind of broader scope of what's called the aspect warriors. See what they did there? That's very clever. So you have, for instance, the aspect of the destroyer, of the kind of dragon, and those are referred to as the fire dragons. And these are Aeldari troops, heavily armored, who carry flamethrowers and melta-guns, the kind of microwave fusion guns that can melt anything in front of it. You have warriors focused on stealth and close combat, who are referred to as the striking scorpions. And these are green-clad or green armor-clad Aeldari with shuriken pistols, chain swords, and they've got something called a Mandy blaster, which is on their helmet.
Oh, yeah.
They have this rig that fires
fires MDMA at people.
Yeah.
The crowds are like, shoot me, shoot me.
Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Mr. Chris, go on.
You said that legions of the flamers and the heavy melter wielding units. Are they all in one unit? Because if I was a general, I'd probably spread those around. I'd probably have one flamer per squad. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't put all my combustible units in one basket, as it were.
Yeah. So, yes. So the kind of basic Aeldari troop type, which are referred to as the Guardians, you have Guardian Defenders, which have ranged weapons, and the Storm Guardians, which have close combat weapons. The Storm Guardians do have access to flamers and to melta-guns for squad support. What I'm referring to with the Aspect Warriors is you have an entire squad armed in that fashion who are, the best of the best in terms of soldiers who you can send on specific missions to take out specific targets and fill roles, which is why they're referred to as Aspect Warriors, because they master a certain aspect of war.
So if you had them on the tabletop, would they move around as a squad together?
As a single squad, yeah.
You wouldn't split them up and have, like Chris said, like one. You'd have a squad made of like one scorpion dude and then another flamey dude and then a guardian dude. No.
They operate in concert. That's not to say that there are not mixtures of aspect warriors or aspect temples, as they're referred to, who don't work well with each other. Like you have what's referred to as the Dire Avengers. These are the kind of the SAS of the Aeldari, in quotes, who are real kind of veteran soldiers, and they combine quite well with other aspects. In fact, work quite well with most aspects. The jetpack troops are the kind of swooping hawks, they have each aspect temple has a specific way of arming themselves. So the Dire Avengers have shuriken catapults, and their leaders have certain types of power weapon. So they're able to pin an enemy down, say, while the swooping hawks, who are equipped with kind of quite high-powered las guns, but they also have grenade packs on their thighs. So when they fly over a troop, they can drop grenades directly onto them. So awesome. Then, yeah, pop, 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 pop. Pop, 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 pop.
I'm just looking at the pictures of them now. Like, they're so colourful. Like, compared to a lot of the other miniatures, they just seem to be like really vibrant, bold colours, like primary colours.
They're not afraid of being shot, are they? They are not afraid.
Yeah. Well, say what you like about them, they look fabulous on the battlefield.
Were you sure a bullseye sigil on your chest is a good design? I don't give a fuck.
So if you had like an army of them, would they still all be painted in the separate colours, or would you?
Yes, because they are. You have to think of them as religious warriors. They're not really, but that's their kind of specialism is based within the mythology of the Aeldari race.
Gotcha.
And that all comes back to a being that we'll discuss. Well, probably discuss it now. Is they have a bloody-handed god called Kyla Mensha Cain. Now, I wonder, lads, if you've ever heard it. Or Cain for short, exactly right. Have we ever come across someone like that?
No. I've tried.
So at the heart of each craft world, there is a shrine where a sliver of the essence of an actual god exists, kind of either standing still or sat on a throne. It depends on the craft world. This is a piece of the broken god, the broken bloody-handed god Cain, Kyla Mensha Cain. Cain became broken at the moment that Slaanesh manifested. So when Slaanesh came into being and started hunting down the other gods of the Aeldari, Cain sacrificed himself to be able to give the other gods enough time to go and hide effectively. And
cool.
Some were able to, some were not. In the process, and I'm simplifying this down way, way too much, I suspect, Cain was shattered into hundreds of thousands of pieces. Some of those pieces actually ended up manifesting inside Craftworlds, and the Wraithbone itself responded by spontaneously creating a shrine for this sliver of a god. Now, it's not just a kind of weird chunk of flesh. it is in fact, a 20 to 30 foot high iron statue, hollow suit of armor of the god himself, and you can actually use that figure on the tabletop. It's a figure you can use in the games of 40K.
How tall did you say it was?
It's somewhere between
20
20 and 30 feet, yeah.
So on the tabletop, is it quite a large figure then?
Oh, it's a big centerpiece miniature, yeah. I can't remember how much it costs.
Gets in the way.
Gets in the way. It dies a little bit too easy for my liking, but there we go. Swings and roundabouts.
I mean, is that not the case? I mean, is that not the case with most Eldar? That they're very powerful, but they're also very weak on defense.
Yeah, they're what's referred to as a glass cannon. They're incredibly effective, but if you just go up and slap them, they shatter into bits.
Bitch slap.
Bitch slap. So, at the heart of all these Craftworlds is a god, the still form of a god that only really wakes or is awoken at a time of war. Now, all of the aspect shrines that have all these kind of super duper but really focused warriors, they're all led by what's referred to as an exarch. And this is an Aeldari who's walked many paths, including the path of the aspect warrior that they're on, and who have decided not to leave that path ever. They are now dedicating themselves to the rest of their lives to that specific aspect. And they take on the role of kind of priests, warrior priests of that aspect of Cain. And so when the Craftworlds need to be roused to war, there's a meeting is held between kind of warlocks and farseers, who are the kind of wizard prophets of the Eldar. They will select a group of exarchs, and one of them will be anointed as the young king. That exarch walks into the shrine with the embodiment of Cain. The door is closed. They hear horrific noises, screaming, crying,
Giggling,
maybe some really bad drum and bass, who knows? And then the doors to the temple of Cain are flung open, and out comes this walking kind of idol of a god who has their molten kind of core heating up their iron skin, so they're glowing this kind of horrible red, but their hands are dripping with blood. Who knows where from? The young king. But it eternally drips. It drips forever.
that sounds inconvenient.
Yeah, and there's no remains of the young king anywhere. How the statue is brought to life, no one can say. But when it comes to life, it is as if it is Cain itself.
Wow!
And
right.
when the doors are opened, every Aeldari on the Craftworld knows that they are to go to war footing. So they all, they dust the bone dust off their bone armor, and they get their bone guns, and they march the little bony asses down to the marshalling grounds.
Bone this, bone that.
Bone that.
Bony, bone.
Get to it.
All the aspect warriors then put on ritual face paint and don their helmets. Interestingly, with the aspect warriors, when they don their helm, they are able to subdue their own individuality, and all that's left is the kind of manifestation of that aspect that they're embodying. So the swooping hawks effectively act like really angry falcons, and the striking scorpions take on this kind of scuttling arachnoid style movement. The howling banshees, which is another aspect, they are kind of warrior women for the most part, who they're able to use their vocal cords and amplifiers in their helmets to paralyze the nervous systems of foes as they attack. And then we have I've mentioned the Dire Avengers and the Fire Dragons, but you also have the Dark Reapers, who are smaller squads of black-clad Aeldari who use rocket launchers to destroy enemy emplacements and that kind of stuff. There are other aspect warriors. One of my favorites is referred to as the warp spiders. And these have teleport backpacks and guns that fire clouds of monomolecular wire. So they're able to bamf into a position, spray it all down with wire that if you move, it just kind of cuts you into millions of little pieces, and then bamf out. But they're named after an animal, in quotes, which is effectively a small wraith spider. And these are wraithbone constructs that are able to merge into the wraithbone cores of Craftworlds and Maiden Worlds. They kind of enforce the implicit racism of the undead by being able to eat renegade Aeldari spirits or of demon spirits that make it into the wraithbone core.
Oh, cool. Well, like kind of like little caretakers.
Yeah, little caretaker spiders.
Little nanobot.
Yeah.
Well, not nanobot, but you know what I mean. That's cool.
So in addition to all these fantastic warriors, you have all the usual accoutrements of war. You've got various types of vehicle. Most, in fact, all of the vehicles the Aeldari have are hover vehicles or flight vehicles. There's no tracked or wheeled vehicles. So you've got lots of jet bikes, lots of Vipers, which are jet bikes with a heavy weapon mounted on the back. You then have various types of hover tank, various types of airplane. But I think the most interesting aspects...
Airplanes that hover?
No.
Get out of town.
Yeah. No, actually, no, you're right. Those ones are wheeled. You then have...
Those ones have tracks.
But the most interesting aspect of the, if you excuse the pun, of the Aeldari system is their use of what we would consider necromancy. So they have what used to be referred to as dreadnoughts, which are these in the Imperium. If a warrior becomes mortally wounded but still is seen as a heroic figure, their remains will be interred in an amniotic sac inside of this walking kind of death machine.
Oh yeah, it's
they
the
have
sack
a
inside
similar
of a box, inside of a slightly bigger box, inside of
with
another
guns,
sack,
yeah.
inside of a machine. Yeah,
yeah.
that one.
So the Aeldari have a similar kind of construct, but it uses waystones. So what they'll do is they'll attach a hollow waystone to the wraithbone core of a craft world. They will pray to the spirits within, and a suitable warrior spirit will put itself into the waystone, and then that waystone is attached to a solid wraithbone construct. And we have three kind of variations of these. We have the Wraith Guard, which are about 9 foot tall and carry these what's referred to as D cannons or dimension cannons, disruptor cannons. And these fire bolts of pure warp energy and are able to, if you're hit by it, whatever bit of you is hit is sucked into the warp and put back. So you basically mutate to death. Or if it's large enough, you basically walk around with chunks of you missing.
So sorry, it hits you. The bit it hits goes to the warp, and then it comes back.
Yeah, yes,
and it's then mutated.
It's either mutated or it comes back differently and in a different point of space. I think,
i.e., it doesn't come back.
Nothing like a boomerang, though. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't come back. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so you also then have what's referred to as Wraith Blades, which are they're Wraith Guard, but they're armed for close combat. They have axes and shields, or they have two big swords.
They'll slap you.
Yeah. So they're incredibly tough because it is Wraith Bone, as it were. They're like mini dreadnoughts, as we would understand them. They then have a thing called a Wraith Lord, which is what we would consider a dreadnought, and in fact is based on the original Aeldari dreadnought from first edition 40K. And so these are about 15 to 16 foot tall, really kind of lanky but quite elegant machines that are imbued with the spirit of a dead warrior, and again fulfill the same role as a human dreadnought, insofar as they can be geared for close combat, they can be geared for fire support, or for just kind of a general battlefield role. But they're frequently used to hold a single position, or groups of them to assault an enemy stronghold.
So you say it's embodied by a single soul. Is that
Yes.
Can that soul communicate with other members of the army?
Great question. Those two types of troops, in terms, or war engines, or constructs, we'll call them, they can operate, but it's the spirit inside each of them views the world as if it's kind of a dream, like views reality as a dream. So they're effective. You can't trust them 100% to do everything you need them to do at any given time.
Right.
Unless they're near other living Aeldari, in which case they become more reliable. There is a kind of a caste of seer called a spirit seer who can really sharpen the focus of an Aeldari spirit to the point where it's as if it was alive and fully aware, and so on. So these spirit seers are really the kind of the fulcrum for a lot of these necromantic forces. The final kind of big construct, well, there's two left, but really the largest form of walking construct is called a Wraith Knight. And these are kind of sad sack characters. They look incredibly impressive, but they're piloted by both a living Eldar and a dead Eldar, as in a spirit stone.
And they're always bickering.
Bank yes.
Left. No, let's
yes.
bank right.
They do actually tend to all bicker, because it has to be twins. It has to be a group, like a set of twins where one is dead, one is alive. And that's...
I mean, you guys aren't twins, but I could imagine you both attempting to steer a Wraith Knight. Like,
I'd be like, right. I'd be like, Dart, you just deal with the legs. I'll deal with the guns. That's it. I mean, I know. So is the responsibility split between them, or how does that work?
Yeah. So
just let them work it out.
One has the left half, one has the right half. It's like, we have divided this the wrong way. This is not effective. We just tear ourselves into two.
What's that movie? Pacific Rim. It's like that. Yeah, it's like those giant walking robots like that. But they're constantly at each other. No, the dead spirit takes over the kind of autonomic responses. So we walk without really thinking about walking, think about what's required for walking. So right. The dead Aeldari would look after that, and the living Aeldari would look after the more active kind of initiative, changing battlefield situation, or reactions to changing battlefield situations. Yeah.
How big is it?
They're like Titans,
We're
right?
looking... Yeah, they're mini Titans. So you're looking at around somewhere about 40 foot tall, I think.
Wow. That is
30 to 40 feet tall. They are proper war machines. And they are in fact about the same size as an Imperial Knight. They're a little bit taller, in fact. Mr. Chris.
It sounds like, generally speaking, units, whether it's the Aeldari, the Imperium, and the other races, they can go toe-to-toe in many aspects. Like, they all have their kind of ground foot troops. They have some sort of stormtroop squad. They have their heavy weapons, and then they have their war machines and things like that. Nuances, and obviously they don't look the same, but they kind of have their own very similar setups. And, you can almost mirror the units in a lot of these races. My question is, are there Aeldari equivalent Primarchs?
Ooh, good question.
There are, but these are more... They would occupy a similar place in Aeldari kind of mythology than in actual effectiveness, as it were. They would hold the same kind of spiritual significance. And these are what's referred to as the Phoenix Lords. And Phoenix Lords were the founding members of each shrine of aspect warriors within the Aeldari Craftworlds. So the founder of the Dire Avengers is Azurmen.
Right.
As your men.
Yeah, my men are fine. How are your men? Like a good example would be Fugan, who is the Phoenix Lord of the Fire Dragons. Now, he wears, or his armor is incredibly ornate, incredibly intricate. Looks like a walking dragon, carries what's referred to as a fire pike, which is a long-range melta gun, and a power axe that is in fact just an axe, a super red-hot axe. That just
this is power along the hill.
So it says power.
Yeah.
That says that much like Mace Windu's lightsaber says "bad motherfucker" on the axe head.
It's an axe that needs to be plugged into the mains at all times.
Yeah,
like, it's just a huge extension cable.
An interesting aspect of these Phoenix Lords, I keep using aspect, is that they have multiple waystones on their armor at any given time.
They look like the B.A. Baracus of
yeah, they blinged.
the Eldari.
Just blinged.
I mean,
like
not all in one
huge
place,
medallion.
Chris. They don't look like they're covered. They've got like some sort of infestation of scarabs on one shoulder. There's a touch of the necromantic, and there's, in fact, from the last episode, there's a touch of the Rubik Space Marines of Tzeentch about them, because they will appear, and then, they kind of King Arthur-y style, they will appear when they're most needed, and then they'll fade away into the webway. The remains are almost always found in the webway or on an abandoned Aeldari maiden world. And when they're found, their armor is always hollow. Always. And so they only ever really find the armor. And an Aeldari who puts on the armor has their psyche effectively drawn out of their mind and into one of these waystones. And then the personality, that's the kind of collective personality of the Phoenix Lord that's trapped within the waystones around their armor, goes into that kind of physical Aeldari. And so they have a level of immortality, hence the Phoenix Lords.
They can hijack other bodies.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Is that known by the Eldar? Do they know, like, because surely if they knew that was the case, did they go like, oh shit, I found, empty armor. I can't wait to get in this because I'll then be taken over as the Phoenix King.
There is a kind of mixed bag in terms of whether the Eldari are completely aware of what's required for the process of a Phoenix King, or to make a Phoenix Lord, Phoenix King. Where did that come from? But in general, most Eldari are prepared to make an ultimate sacrifice to keep the race going.
Right.
And so that's that. So, yes, aspect warriors and the necromantic wraith constructs of the Eldar are a kind of defining thing, a defining part of their kind of racial warfare. We should just touch perhaps on two further things. The first is the other more esoteric wraith constructs they have. The first being the Hemlock Wraith Fighter. So they have a supersonic, amazing jet fighter that is piloted by the dead. So they have necromantic air cover.
Do the living do anything?
Very little, in fact, very little. They do have another type of fighter, which it's the Crimson Hunter. And the Crimson Hunter is an aspect warrior temple. So you have effectively religious super soldiers flying supersonic jets and wiping out enemies from the...
What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
What can go wrong? Yeah. The other larger constructs that the Eldari have are the equivalent of Titans. And so the most famous being the Phantom Titan. And these are, we're talking now, we're into the 60 to 100 feet tall walking death machines, literally, piloted by crews of both living and dead. There's multiple Eldari, living and dead, within each Phantom Titan. And much like the human Titans, which are dedicated to a Titan Legion, a lot of most if not all of the Aeldari Titans are associated with a specific house. And some houses have temples across multiple craft worlds, and most houses only exist on a single craft world.
Do those big ones, are they part of like the standard tabletop, or is it part of what's the one where they have all the big mechs? Is it Titanicus?
Titanicus. No, you can buy 40k scale Phantom Titans that tower above other things. It'll cost you like 800 quid for the mini to get it on the tabletop. But, surprisingly effective, especially if you just pick it up and smack your enemy's force with it.
But like if you have like a 2,000 point army, is that going to be most of that allocation?
Yes, you'd only really include it in a force where you're facing other Titans by agreement with your opponent and stuff.
Right, okay. Yeah. It's just a bit unfair if you turn up at a competition with two of these fuckers. Just bonk. Let's go. Shoot my ankles, bitch.
Two of these and a Hemlock Wraith fighter that doesn't have any guiding spirit that just flies into things. But in the very polite Aeldari fashion goes, well, I beg your pardon. Speaking of guidance, the final thing we'll touch on with the craft world is the path of the seer. I touched earlier on warlocks and farseers. These are the guiding councils of the Aeldari craft worlds, who, in conjunction with what's referred to as autarchs, who are the kind of non-wizard leaders of craft worlds, guide their craft worlds down kind of paths of destiny to be able to minimize the conflicts and casualties that will inevitably come their way. This is a significantly larger commitment for a specific Eldar to give to become a warlock or a farseer, which will ultimately lead either to their death in battle or their permanent, how would you describe, their permanent imprisonment within a crystal forest of former farseers. As those on the farseer path age, their body slowly turns into crystal. And so when it gets to a point where they know that they can't, where they can't continue any further, they'll go into a special chamber where their crystalline form will eventually merge with the Wraith core, so that their wisdom and guidance will be added to the collective Wraith core of an entire craft world.
That's cool.
Yeah. And in terms of longevity, it should be said that the Eldrad Ulthuan, is the longest lived farseer recorded so far, who existed during the time of the Horus Heresy and met with some of the Primarchs, one in particular.
Cool.
To try and influence not only the path of human civilization, but to kind of save their own craft world, which had just for a few hundred years existed floating through space, trying to guide fate so that they were not destroyed.
And what was
in any
that?
real way.
What was that person's name?
Eldrad Ulthran. Yes, nice. Eldrad Ulthran, who is the mightiest and perhaps most ancient farseer within Aeldari history. And that that farseer exists on one craft world. Mr. Ben.
Can I ask a question that may betray the whole me not knowing anything?
Go on then.
Is Eldrad Ulthran part of the Cabal?
He was originally involved in the Cabal, yes.
I'll say no more, mainly because I don't know anything else. I knew that was okay.
So in terms of having these lads appear on the tabletop, there are various rules within the codices for bringing unique flavors to Craftworlds. So much like the chapters of Space Marines or the regiments of the Imperial Guard, there's rules that govern how you construct an Eldar force for a specific Craftworld, or indeed for inventing your own. There are kind of 5 main ones, and we'll just briefly run through them now. So Eandin, whose colours are yellow and blue, are very much masters of the necromantic troop types, mostly because not so long ago their craft world was absolutely decimated by a Tyranid fleet. It effectively killed 9 out of every 10 Eldar that existed on that craft world, and was only turned back when the dead themselves took form in the Wraith constructs and absolutely obliterated every single Tyranid they could find.
Cool.
So it's very much an empty city with the Eldar or the Aeldari kind of breezing through. So it's a very malorn place. That fighting force has a lot of Wraith constructs. It has access to Spirit Seers, but that gives you an idea of the type of extreme version you can put on the tabletop. Biel-Tan is a kind of a fighting, how would you describe it? It's an aspect warrior heavy army where a lot of the aspect warriors, who are normally reserve troops like heavy support or fast attack or elite, you can actually bring them in as troop choices, as basic troop choices, so you can get a very elite force together very quickly. Ally Talk, as I have been mispronouncing them for decades, literally decades. Oh God, I'm old. They are very much like a scout force. You have a lot of Pathfinders and Eldar scouts. And Eldar scouts chose the path of the outcast. These are ones that kind of eschew the path system to an extent and go out into the wider universe to experience what it's like and to identify threats and so forth and report back. A lot of scouts there, a lot of guardians, the basic troops, and a lot of walkers in terms of their war walkers, which are bipedal war machines that carry 2 heavy weapons. What then do we have? We have Saim Han, and that is effectively jet bike central. A lot of jet bikes and hover tanks. Very few infantry that can't be mounted within a tank, and so you get a very fast, swift-moving force to take out the enemy. And then finally we have Ulthui, where Eldrad Ulthran is from. And look at that, I pronounced it flawlessly that time. And these are...
I couldn't tell you whether you had or not, to be honest. I mean, I'll have to take your word for
This is a craft world where every single Eldar has to be a warrior, because they're constantly fighting. And so while you do have aspect warriors there, you have what's referred to as the Black Guardians, who are, on other craft worlds would be artisans that are every now and then warriors. These are warriors who are every now and then artisans. And so these are a more rigorous and deadly troop type. You also get various levels of seer associated with that, because such a focus is put on protecting your troops and having warlocks, battle wizards effectively, and farseers involved on kind of day-to-day military operations. So those 5 craft worlds are kind of the core 5 that have appeared in all the editions, but they give you an example of the specialization that you can go to within an Aeldari army. Craft worlds.
Bam.
There we go. Chris.
You might sigh at this question. A craft world is an Aeldari world. That's what you call all Aeldari worlds. Craft worlds.
Only the ones that are
cities,
floating cities.
Craft worlds are just the artificial,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, like spaceships, basically. Okay.
I was waiting for you to go. You might groan at this, but I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Could you repeat the last?
That goes without saying, Darren.
The last 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So, what's an Aeldari?
Actually, I have a question. What, in terms of Aeldari physiology, are they much the same as humans? I know that they're obviously
Humanoid.
They obviously look a little bit more,
Yeah.
as you say, svelte, a bit more slender. But are they the same height? The same
Yes.
makeup generally?
They like if an Eldar and a human were standing still, or rather, if an Eldar and a really, really attractive skinny human were standing still, you'd be tough pushed to tell the difference. The moment an Eldar moves, they have a grace that we will never be able to match. So you could tell instantly that it was an alien being, a Xenos.
By the way, they cartwheel out the room.
Yeah, no.
It's not normal.
I mean, it's an unfortunate thing, and I don't know why they included it, but they Zoidberg scuttle everywhere. It's really distracting. But let's just close out this episode then with the Exodites. The Exodites, or the arboreals, as we'll call them, they very much followed in the same mold as the Craftworlds in setting up their home destination. There is a Wraithbone kind of planet spirit core, a planetary core, which operates the same function as a kind of necromantic battery to protect the spirits and souls of the Exodites upon death. These Eldar don't really follow the same kind of path system as the Craftworlders because they feel they don't really need to. They've eschewed a lot of the more kind of hedonistic practices and kind of highfalutin cultural practices. They're really kind of Eldari hillbillies. And I use that term really as a pejorative, and I stand by it.
Could you imagine?
But culturally, it's that kind of idea, yes. So they've gotten rid of most of their vehicular technology and ride, as Ben has intimated at the very not intimated, said it right at the start of this episode. Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
They ride space dinosaurs.
Just dinosaurs.
Spinosaurs. Yeah. So there was no real, or I should say before we crack on, there's never really been any miniatures for these figures outside of test miniatures for the Epic game system, the small scale, literally a single figure is 6 mils tall.
Wow.
However, rules did appear for them in 2nd edition. 40K, where you could field squads of velociraptor riding Aeldari knights. And to give you a kind of a vision of what these would be, these would look like, the kind of Jurassic Park size velociraptor with a saddle, with an Eldar knight who has a mix of kind of wood elfy and dragony kind of motif armor, a laser lance, a helmet, and probably a shield as well as they smash into the opponent's ranks. So very much a kind of, more of a fantasy sci-fi than a sci-fi fantasy, if you take my meaning. They have various size. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to expand on that. There does seem an odd choice of mount and weaponry when you're up against las cannons, plasma cannons, and other cannons.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's just cannons.
Riding a prehistoric animal. I'm assuming it's prehistoric.
Shit, they've got cannons. Release the dinosaurs. What? That's a terrible idea.
I mean, they do have. I mean, that's not the only troop type they have. That's the most common in terms.
Oh, they have
of
a big fuck
these,
off bomb as well. Yeah, okay, fine.
Oh yeah. They do have heavy weapons mounted on top of triceratopses. They do have Triceratops. They do have castles, small castles built on top of giant brachiosaurs or diplodocus. They also have pterodactyls being ridden into battle, not sexually, and were able to drop bombs onto opposing forces and scout ahead. So they do have a huge mix of dinosaur-based war machines.
It's just more mouths to feed, isn't it? Like, they seem like the Avatar of
growl.
the 40K world.
Always comes down to the function with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Avatar. I can't remember what the race is, but Avatar, and they go up against
But how are these people paid?
That's a lot of dung. That's a lot of dung to clear up.
Yeah, but they're living on a paradise of a world that they've created themselves. It's very sparsely populated. There's only a handful of million Aeldari Exodites on a given maiden world, even if that many.
What's the Exodite to dinosaur ratio?
I would say it's probably 6-2, which is what I like to call 3-1 dinosaur. I got carried away.
12 to...
No, I went, is it 6-1? I said, no, it's not that many. Maybe 6-2. Wait, 3-1. So for every Aeldari, there's 3 dinosaurs. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's an interesting concept of paradise, isn't it? It's like, right, let's make this verdant planet and then put dinosaurs on it. It's like, well, like really kind of like the ones that eat plants, like herbivores. No, we'll put velociraptors on there. It'll be great.
But they do have their own versions of farseers. They have their own versions of, in quotes, aspect warriors, but these are really kind of the kind of dinosaur dragon knights that are more dragon knighty than any other dragon knight. And they have cities. In some cases, they have small towns that are mobile, but only mobile because they're pulled by a load of dinosaurs. Imagine the smell on that in a bad day.
Do they have any kind of that like hover technology?
They do have access
pterodactyls.
Yeah.
Hover. Not flapping technology. Hover.
You can make one hover. It doesn't stay up for long.
Yeah, they do have access to all this, the more highly advanced aspects of Aeldari culture. They just choose not to bother. They choose to stay away from the things that, if they can do themselves, they will, because that was the problem. The problem was with Aeldari culture before the fall was everything was, we can get something to do it for us. So you didn't have to do anything, which meant nothing. It's that, I've forgotten who said it, which really struck me. It was like about rich people, how they're never really happy because if everything is great, you can afford the best of everything. So if everything is great, nothing is good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's nothing impresses you anymore. So it's very much the Exodites have turned their back. Yeah. So they can do all these things. They've just chosen to turn their back on.
So when the different Aeldari factions and races meet up, you get fucking the hover bike dudes turning up. You get the hover tank dudes. You even just get the regular foot soldiers just mooching along. And then you get this big fucking brontosaurus pulling a big fucking thing on. I'm guessing it's on wheels or something like that because they choose not to have hover anything. And how did the so many questions. All right, I'm just
what was on wheels? What were you saying was on wheels?
What the thing that these big
the brontosaurus
are pulling? Yeah, the brontosaurus on wheels pulling
rollerblades
on wheels.
That's amazing. Man.
That is
giant Aeldari rollerblades.
So an Exodite on a velociraptor on ice skates. Let's do this.
A rollerblading massive brachiosaurus. Imagine the size of the knee pads. That'd be crazy.
They don't need knee pads, bro.
Imagine the neck pad. The neck pad would be enormous.
Pad. You've never roller skated before, have you?
Whenever, look at me. I mean, I wear a helmet just for walking. So whenever a Craftworld Aeldari meets an Exodite Aeldari, they're kind of dripping with condescension because they view the Exodites as the kind of backwards hillbilly cousins of their forebearers. Yeah.
They look badass. Some of these minis look really badass, but I just feel that they're at a handicap compared to the people with floating war machines and don't need to feed their dinosaurs sugar cubes every so often and treat them.
Yeah. Well, I suppose in terms of the war game, yeah, you're probably right. That's probably why there's never been huge kind of runs of dinosaur miniatures for 40K. But in terms of lore, it sort of makes sense. If you're trying to avoid the hedonism of your forebears, you need to kind of turn your back on all of that stuff.
Yeah.
What you'll
They look
find,
cool. They do
though,
look cool.
in terms of the relation between Craftworlds and Maiden Worlds, a lot of Craftworlds have portals, warp gates that or webway gates that they're able to get into these Exodite planets, into these Maiden Worlds. So a lot of the Maiden Worlds are sort of under the kind of condescending protection of Craftworlds. So if a human exploratory fleet ever lands on one of these Maiden Worlds, suddenly not only are you facing the kind of sporadic effectiveness of Dino Riders, but also suddenly there's Craftworld Eldar there shooting you up, getting you to fuck off and never come back to the planet again.
The dinosaurs were just a decoy. Like, these dino riding idiots, they're not a threat. Whoa! And here comes the technology.
I mean, Chris, I'll be honest with you, I suspect a lot of those dinosaurs are inflatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Timmy malleted some dinosaurs.
Timmy malleted, yeah.
We done?
Wrap it up, baby.
All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, merchandise, and you can sign up for the Laying Down the Lore newsletter, which includes exclusive info about upcoming releases, behind-the-scenes chat, and some extra lore not covered in the podcast. Again, if you're keen to support this show, just click on the Support Us link in the description and give us all of the money that you own. We'll be back again soon, displaying just how little Chris and I know. Until then, ta-ta.
Farewell, Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
See you, chumps!